What are the underlying causes of obesity? As we talk about these underlying causes, realize that nobody have a single cause for their obesity. It's always multifactorial. And that's why it's so important as we discuss obesity to not try to pigeonhole people into one area, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking at people in a holistic fashion. So dietary habits. We've been talking here about the food that we eat. We've been talking about the war for your health. And a big component of that was the food. Not just in terms of the types of things we're eating, but the idea that our food, a lot of it is processed. And processed food itself predisposes us to put on weight. We talked about the density of the food that we eat. We talked about the information, the idea that when we eat the food, it does not, in the stomach, give the type of stretch that we need to signal those hormones. Remember the hormones, ghrelin and leptin, the hunger hormone and the satiety hormone. If our physical stomach, if our physical body does not send the signal, then we have issues in terms of the chemical and the hormonal effects on our body, right? So dietary, sedentary lifestyle. Well, before I go to sedentary, let's talk about a little bit about dietary. A lot of people assume that when you are obese, that it's just that you eat too much. Yeah, that's just the assumption. Well, if she didn't eat that much, if he didn't eat that much, then they wouldn't be overweight. They wouldn't be obese. In fact, if they have diabetes and if they have high blood pressure and high cholesterol, it's probably their fault, because if they ate better, they wouldn't be obese. And if they weren't obese, then they wouldn't have those things, all right? So I want to hasten to say, make 2 points. One, there are people who are not obese who still have high blood pressure and who still have high cholesterol, who still have strokes and heart attacks and so forth, right? So you probably know some people like that. But weight is a very significant risk factor for all of those things, right? So that's the first point I wanted to make. The other point I want to make is that we'll see here in just a little while that the dietary habits that we have often come from some of the societal and psychological factors in which we live. So it's not just about the food, it's about a lot of the other things that go on in our lives, okay? So sedentary lifestyle. Unless we are determined and unless we are deliberate, many of us don't live a lifestyle where our normal daily activities allow us to be active, right? Come on, you know that's true, right? So you get up in the morning, and if you are not deliberate about exercising, you get up, you get dressed, you get in the car, you drive to work, you spend all day within the job, even if you're walking around in your office, right? Unless you are working in a warehouse where you've got to walk a mile or walk a significant distance, if you work at Walmart or Lowe's or one of those big box stores where there's a lot of walking, if you work in a manufacturing plant, right? Other than that, you're in an office, you're in a store, you're at some convenient place where you're giving service, where you are doing customer service, you're sitting at the desk, and you do that. Maybe you go to lunch, you come back, you sit, you go work in the afternoon, you get up, you get in your car, you drive home, you cook dinner, you eat, you talk to the family, you watch TV, you get in bed, right? Sedentary lifestyle. So our daily lives sometimes don't support not being sedentary, right? So you got to be deliberate. Okay, you got to be deliberate. So reduce physical activity. That goes along with this idea of sedentary lifestyle. So some of us are just sedentary, and then our jobs don't allow that. Genetics. Now, this one we got to be careful with, because I've heard people say, right? So I've talked to people say, hey, we've got to work on weight. Hey, we've got to work on getting exercise and so forth. And I've heard people say to me, well, this is just how I am. My entire family like this. We're all big boned. So I've heard that. So there's genetics that plays a part, but a lot of times genetics is influenced by our environment. Birds of a feather flock together. So we all tend to eat the same. We all tend to have the same kind of activities. And so if we're not careful, we end up with the same kind of body habitus, right? And then metabolism. So metabolism slows as we age. So now if you add metabolism on top of genetics, on top of reduced physical activity, on top of a sedentary lifestyle, on top of our dietary habits, you see how the compounding continues to escalate? And before long, you're fighting this battle that seems insurmountable. And then societal factors. These are things like the food deserts. This is, the fact that healthy foods tend to cost more. This is the fact that some of our underprivileged areas don't have access to the things that we are telling people are healthy for them. Right? They don't have the access to education to teach and to inform. And then there are the psychological factors. What are psychological factors? Now, these are psychological factors. These are things that make us eat the way we eat. You're sad and you eat to compensate for sadness. You're mad and you compensate by eating to soothe the madness. You are tired. You're bored, you're up late, you are frustrated, you're happy, and we eat to soothe those emotions. And the question that I'm gonna ask here in a little while is, if we know what we look like, and if we know we don't wanna be like that, what is a factor that keeps us where we are? It's a problem of underfeeling. What does that mean? That means that we are not capable often of being in a space with an uncomfortable feeling without wanting to fix it immediately. And so we turn to what are termed buffering behaviors. And one of the buffering behaviors is eating.